Every war you have ever lost was fought in the wrong place, not in the boardroom, not in the argument, not in the confrontation, inside your own skull. That is where you were defeated. Before the words were spoken, before the decision was made, before the other person even opened their mouth, you had already surrendered to anxiety, to doubt, to the desperate need for things to go a certain way. And while you were busy managing your emotions, the composed man across from you was already 3 moves ahead. This is not philosophy. This is combat. The Stoics did not sit in temples writing gentle thoughts about virtue. They ran empires. They commanded armies. They walked into rooms full of people who wanted them dead and left those rooms in control. They understood something that most people spend their entire lives running from. The psychological battle is the only battle that matters. Win that, and everything else is execution. Today, we are going to break down exactly how they did it. Not the watered-down version, not the inspirational poster version, the real framework. The one that makes you genuinely difficult to manipulate, impossible to rattle, and dangerous in any high-stakes situation. 10 principles, no filler, let's get into it. Principle 1. They decided the outcome was irrelevant before the fight began. Here is something most people will never understand about psychological battles. The person who needs to win is already losing. The moment you attach your emotional stability to a specific outcome, closing the deal, winning the argument, getting the approval, you have handed the other person a weapon. Because now all they have to do is threaten that outcome, and you are compromised. Your thinking gets cloudy, your behavior gets desperate, and desperate is readable from across the room. The Stoic walks in having already made peace with every possible result. Not because he doesn't care, because he has separated his internal state from external outcomes. He has decided that his composure, his judgment, and his integrity are not contingent on what happens next. Epictetus was enslaved, literally owned by another man, and he was psychologically free in a way his owner never was, because he had located his identity somewhere no one could touch it. That is the foundation of every psychological advantage the Stoics possessed. They could not be leveraged because they had nothing that fear could hold hostage. Before you enter any high-stakes situation, ask yourself what you are secretly clinging to. Find it and let it go first. Then walk in. Principle 2. They used anger as information and nothing else. Anger feels like power. It is not. Anger is your nervous system telling you that something feels threatening or unjust. That signal has value. But the moment you act from it, you have given the other person exactly what they wanted, a reaction. And reactions are predictable. And predictable people lose. Watch what happens when someone provokes a Stoic mind. Nothing visible. The insult lands and the face stays still. The challenge arrives and the voice stays level. The provocateur expected turbulence and got silence, and now they are the ones who are unsettled. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself constantly about anger, not to celebrate it, but to dissect it. He treated his own emotional responses like a general studying enemy movements. What triggered this? What does that trigger reveal about where I am still vulnerable? That is the move. Use anger as a diagnostic tool. When something makes you angry, it is showing you an attachment, an insecurity, a place where your psychology is still unguarded. The Stoic does not perform calmness. He has genuinely built a relationship with his anger, where he is the one in command. And a man who commands his own anger is terrifying to someone who is counting on provoking it. Principle 3. They made patience an offensive weapon. In a world addicted to speed, patience is aggression. Everyone around you is rushing to respond, to react, to prove themselves, to close the gap, to fill the silence. That rush is driven by anxiety, and anxiety-driven behavior makes mistakes. The Stoic waits, not passively, strategically. He lets the other person overextend. He lets the argument exhaust itself. He lets the emotional storm pass and then speaks into the stillness that follows, when everyone else has already spent their ammunition and he has spent none. Seneca said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The impatient man creates suffering for himself by living in the catastrophic future his mind has invented. The patient man stays in the present, where things are almost always more manageable than the fear predicted. But there is a darker application here. Patience in a conflict forces the other person to reveal themselves completely. People cannot maintain a performance indefinitely. If you simply wait long enough, you will see exactly who you are dealing with, their real motivations, their real insecurities, their real position. And once you see that clearly, you are no longer reacting to the surface. You are responding to the truth underneath it. Patience is not waiting. It is harvesting intelligence while the other side burns energy. Principle 4. They controlled the room by controlling their breathing. This sounds too simple. That is exactly why most people skip it and stay weak. Your breath is a direct line into your nervous system. When you are under threat, your breathing becomes shallow and fast, which sends a signal to your brain confirming that danger is present, which intensifies the fear response, which makes your breathing worse. It is a loop, and most people never break it. The Stoics understood the body and the mind as a single system. Marcus Aurelius was meticulous about physical discipline, not for aesthetics, but because he understood that a dysregulated body produces a dysregulated mind, and a dysregulated mind loses every psychological battle before it starts. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. Do this before you walk into any room where the stakes are high. What happens physiologically is measurable. Your heart rate drops. Cortisol decreases. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for strategic thinking, comes back online. But what happens socially is equally powerful. Your voice deepens and slows, your posture opens, your face relaxes, and every person in that room reads those signals unconsciously and registers one thing: this person is not threatened. And people do not push the person who appears unthreatened. They adjust to them, control the breath, control the body, control the room. Principle 5. They never explained themselves to people who were not owed an explanation. Over-explanation is a confession of insecurity. Watch someone who feels uncertain of their position. They justify. They add context no one asked for. They preemptively defend against criticisms that were never made. Every additional sentence is broadcasting the same message. I am not sure you will accept this, and that uncertainty is killing me. The Stoic speaks and stops. He makes his position clear, once, with precision, and then he is done. He does not chase approval. He does not soften the edges to make it more palatable. He does not return 20 minutes later to add more context, because the silence made him nervous. Cato the Younger was known for this. In the Roman Senate, surrounded by men with more political power, more wealth, more alliances, he would state his position in plain language and sit down. The pressure to elaborate, to negotiate, to perform consensus was enormous. He ignored it completely. That restraint communicated something louder than any speech. I said what I meant, I mean what I said, and I do not require your validation to feel certain about it. That is authority, not volume, not aggression, restraint. Know when you are done speaking, and be done. Principle 6. They treated discomfort as training, not punishment. Every time you avoid discomfort, you teach your nervous system that discomfort is dangerous. And a nervous system that believes discomfort is dangerous will keep you small, keep you compliant, and keep you far away from any situation where psychological strength actually matters. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, cold, hunger, public embarrassment, difficult conversations they did not need to have, but chose to have anyway. Not because they were masochists, because they understood something brutal about how courage is built. You do not develop the ability to stay composed under pressure by avoiding pressure. You develop it by seeking pressure in controlled doses until your nervous system recalibrates its threat threshold. Every uncomfortable conversation you initiate, every room you enter knowing you might be rejected, every moment you choose the hard response over the easy silence, you are raising your floor. You are making the situations that used to paralyze you feel ordinary. And when genuinely high-stakes moments arrive, and they will, you will not be a person experiencing that level of pressure for the first time. You will be a person who has been there before, who knows what it feels like and who knows they survive it. That familiarity is armor, and it is built one voluntary discomfort at a time. Principle 7. They read people without letting people read them. Information asymmetry is one of the most powerful advantages in any conflict. When you know more about the other person's internal state than they know about yours, you are playing chess while they are playing checkers. You see the motivation behind the move. They only see the move. The Stoic cultivates this asymmetry deliberately. On one side, he becomes intensely observant. He watches tone shifts, micro-expressions, the gap between what someone says and how their body responds when they say it. He listens not just to the content of what people say, but to what they choose to emphasize, what they avoid, what they circle back to when they think they are being casual. People reveal themselves constantly. Most people are too absorbed in their own performance to notice. The Stoic is not performing, he is watching. On the other side, he becomes emotionally opaque. His face does not broadcast his reactions. His voice does not rise and fall with every emotional shift. His body stays still under pressure. The result is a profound imbalance. He accumulates information while releasing none. And in any strategic encounter, the person with more accurate information about the other side wins. Almost every time. Observe everything. Reveal only what is useful. That is the asymmetry that wins. Principle 8. They chose response time like a weapon. How long you take to respond is a message. Respond instantly and you signal reactivity. The other person's words landed with enough force to move you immediately. You confirm that they have power over your timing. Pause before responding and you signal something entirely different. That you are not moved by urgency. That you process before you react. That their provocation, their pressure, their timeline does not automatically become yours. The Stoic owns his response time completely. In conversation, he lets silence exist without rushing to fill it. In conflict, he takes the beat that most people skip in their anxiety to defend themselves. In negotiation, he is comfortable with a pause that would make the other side desperate to speak. This is not calculation for its own sake. It is the physical expression of a mind that is not being pushed around by external pressure. And here is the effect it has on others. When you consistently refuse to be rushed, people begin to believe you know something they don't. They project depth onto your pauses. They assume your silence contains strategy. Often it does, but even when it doesn't, the perception alone reshapes the dynamic. Control your response time, and you control the rhythm of every interaction you are part of. Principle 9. They let weak men exhaust themselves. One of the most underrated strategies in any psychological battle is simply not fighting when fighting is unnecessary. Reactive people burn enormous energy. Every perceived slight demands a response. Every challenge to their status requires them to prove themselves. Every silence feels like a threat that must be filled. They are constantly spending attention, energy, emotional resources on battles that don't matter. The Stoic watches this and does nothing. He understands that most provocations are not worth engaging, that the person demanding a reaction is often doing so precisely because they need to see you react, to confirm you are affected, to satisfy their own need for significance. Deny them that confirmation, and you deny them the entire point of the provocation. Marcus Aurelius dealt with senators who hated him, generals who envied him, family members who betrayed him. His response was not to match their energy. It was to stay focused on what he could actually control, to let their aggression exhaust itself against his composure, and to still be standing, calm, intact, effective when the noise had passed. Let weak men fight. You conserve your energy for the moments that actually require it. And when you finally move, you move from a full reserve while everyone around you is already depleted. That is not passivity. That is dominance through conservation. Principle 10. They understood that the hardest opponent was always themselves. Every principle in this video comes back to one place. Not your competitor, not your enemy, not the difficult person across the table, you. The Stoics were ruthlessly honest about this. Every failure of composure, every compromised decision, every moment where fear took the wheel, they traced it back to an internal failure, not an external threat. This is an uncomfortable truth because it removes the comfort of blame. You cannot point at circumstances and say they made you react. You cannot point at the other person and say they caused your loss of control. The Stoic accepts full ownership, not from self-punishment, but from a strategic understanding that what you own you can improve. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as a private battle log, not for publication, not for legacy, for himself, because he knew that the version of him that had written the last entry was not yet the version capable of what the empire required. And so he kept working. That relentless internal auditing. Where did I react when I should have observed? Where did I speak when I should have waited? Where did I need something when I should have been sufficient? That is what separates the man who occasionally performs well under pressure from the man who is structurally difficult to defeat. The outer battles are easy once the inner one is won. Stop fighting the world. Win the war inside yourself first, then watch how everything changes. Stoics do not win psychological battles by being louder, more aggressive or more ruthless than everyone else. They win because they have done the work that everyone else avoids. They have sat with their fear and learned its shape. They have identified every need that could be used as leverage against them and systematically reduced it. They have built composure not as a performance but as a structural feature of how they operate. And when they walk into a room, into a conflict, a negotiation, a confrontation, they are not hoping for a good outcome. They are not managing anxiety in real time. They are executing from a position of internal authority that was built long before the moment arrived. That is why they win. Not luck, not talent, architecture.